Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall, Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Hopefully, maybe some people listened to us on Thanksgiving. I don't know if you knew Mike. We got MLB Mike Baruta in the house, host of Polka Pops. I got a polka related question actually for Mike. Mom's in the house too, but we actually did a show on Thanksgiving where we talked about Thanksgiving food. So I'm curious how your Thanksgiving dinner was.
Oh, it's traditional: turkey, stuffing, potatoes, gravy. Yeah, all the good stuff. And pumpkin and apple pie.
Pumpkin, okay. So, yeah, you went, that's super traditional.
Sure.
Because we had to pick one main, two sides, a dessert, and I wanted to throw a football element in there. So we did a commentating pair that you would like to listen to on Thanksgiving, like kind of fantasy draft style. Anybody like Shane picked Keith Jackson for his, we had somebody pick Madden, those kinds of things. So yeah, but those were all on there. Those were all choices. If you had to pick two sides, which would you pick though? Because that's tough to get down to two.
Yeah. Well, you got to have the gravy, but the potatoes and the stuffing kind of go together. Yeah,
and you could throw potatoes and gravy into one.
Yeah,
we kind of had that.
So.
We had that in one.
Then.
Yeah, and then stuffing's the other one. So yeah, those are good. Those are good choices. Yeah. I ended up with lamb as the last pick of the main courses. Somebody picked a sausage before that, and I mean it wasn't even like a Polish sausage. We would like a Polish sausage. We're both Polish.
I don't think I've ever had lamb. I don't think I've ever tried it. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as the sausage, no, leave that for another day. Turkey is turkey.
Well, that's
Turkey Day.
I thought sausage was going to be last, but it was one of the first mains chosen by our buddy Jacob Wessendorf, who covers the Packers. So he's a Wisconsin guy, and he picked a sausage.
Yeah, and probably with cheese to go along with it, right?
Exactly. Well, and you and I are both Polish. Actually, all three of us in studio are all Polish right now. I was curious about about polka pops because my only experience with polkas is Weird Al Yankovic.
Okay.
And I'm curious if you've ever actually listened to him because it's like a new take on polkas.
Yeah, it's all done in spoof, but no, not for a while.
Okay,
not for a while.
It doesn't seem like that would necessarily be your thing, but he's shed some light on polkas, which I like. He's kind of brought that to a new generation to a degree, which is what you guys do on the polka show on Polka Pops.
Exactly. Yeah, every Saturday and Sunday. If you're not aware. Yeah, noon to 3, Saturdays and Sundays. So tune in right on this Jethro station.
Definitely. And Polka Pops, and then then there's like
polka
an after
overtime.
show, Polka Overtime.
For another hour each day.
If you didn't have enough of the polkas, you got to stream it for one more hour from Jethro FM and all the places that you listen to us here. So yeah, it's a good show. I like that we have polka. I like that we have variety here. But yeah, I wanted to talk some sports. I know we were talking about the Lions a little bit. We covered them on Thursday, and we'll cover them on Shane Graham's show here, Extra Points, on Thursday. I know the general mood is not as good about them here. That we got Frank Ragnow coming out of retirement and then going right back into retirement very quickly. It looks like Terrion Arnold just got sent to the injured reserve. Dr. Liao, who will be on the show on Thursday, is talking about how bad Kirby Joseph's knee is. So
St. Brown,
St. Brown was not healthy. Only played the first quarter on Thanksgiving. So I would like to be positive. They survived a lot of injuries last year, but you were kind of comparing it to last year a little bit, Mike, that, there's all these injuries now kind of everywhere, but just like they had on the defense last year.
Last year, there's nobody left. Surprising that they held up as well as they did with all the, next man up really came to mean something last year with defense. But this year, they're having a harder time overcoming a lot of inexperience that they have to throw in there on that offensive line.
And it's a legitimately difficult schedule too. Not that you want to go to schedule or injuries, but those are factors here. They've got the Cowboys coming up. That's going to be a tough game. They're suddenly red hot. They've beaten the Eagles.
All of a sudden, I was 2 games ago that Philly had them 21-0 or something.
Yeah,
like that. And I didn't watch any more, but next day I see they won. So and Philly's down, but they had a three-score lead on them, and they let it get away.
And they're still one of the better teams in the NFC. That's I guess if there is one promising part about the Lions' run is if they can sneak into the playoffs, it will be a harder road. But there's no definitively. There's the teams that aren't at the top aren't quite as definitive this year, I don't think. Because you've got the Rams who have played very well. We don't know how Stafford's back will hold up. We don't know what the injuries will look like there, but they've got a young defense, a very experienced quarterback that we know well here, but there's no clear-cut top of the line teams in the NFC. So if they can sneak in, I could see them making a run, especially if they're remotely healthy, but that'll take a while, I think, to get there.
Yeah, they got, a little bit more than a month of regular season to go. So, they pretty much have to win out to have any kind of a shot. So we'll see. They got some tough games. They got Cowboys. Those Rams are in there, I think. The Bears.
Yeah.
I think they finish up with the Bears.
That's the last game.
Definitely riding high.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I told, we're actually going to have his brother on the show later in the show, but I told our Bears representative who does a blog, Huff on Sports, local guy, Rob Huff, I told him during the first interview about the Bears, I said, I could see this team being first or last. And he kind of laughed me off about the first part because he tries to be very objective about his own team, but they're in first here, and they're at the top, not only of the division, but basically the conference at this point in time. And they're for real. They're looking good. They've got a strong defense. He filled out a nice staff there, Ben Johnson did. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping that game at the end means something, because that would be great.
That would be
cinema.
Hopefully it's not just a mop-up game that everybody's going home after.
Right. Yeah. And then it would likely mean something for the Lions, because it's trending to certainly mean something for the Bears.
Sure.
So hopefully there's something on the line for that. But since we have MLB in studio, I always like to talk Tigers and his namesake MLB, because I don't know, would you have liked the NFL more if your initials were NFL? Is that?
I don't know. They're my initials, and I'm going to keep them. I think Major League Baseball took them from me. I never even asked. But
the original MLB in studio here.
They use those initials, but anyway, no biggie.
Well, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because obviously the big issue now for the off season here, we're gonna have Emily Walden on at some point in January to talk Arizona Fall League and Kevin McGonigal and some of the young guys that were there. But obviously the Skubal contract is the big discussion right now, and I'm curious where you stand on that, because I was putting together some notes before the show to talk with you about it, and I don't know why, but it occurred to me that it's reminding me a little bit of the whole situation with Miguel Cabrera in a strange way, because you had Cabrera who came over in one of these big time trades, and that wasn't necessarily something they didn't necessarily think they're going to get this good of a return. The Marlins got what they thought was a very good return there. Cabrera worked out very well, but there was two sides to that whole Miguel Cabrera deal. The Tigers side worked out very well in the trade, and Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller and the other pieces that they got back in Florida didn't work out as well. And so you got that piece of it, but you also got the part that they then signed him to a massive contract at the end, and the team as a whole did not do much of anything during that time. And for a team that probably is destined to be lower budget, they're probably not going to ratchet it up to a Mike Ilitch level of spending. Chris Ilitch has been clearly different with his spending level. I'm just curious where you land on that. If you're more in the camp that you want to see him stay, or if you'd like to see maybe, because it'd be a good package. Again, it'd be the young guys, but it'd be a good package.
And prospects are prospects, like you said in the trade. Miguel coming over from the Marlins, you figured he was good, but you didn't know he was going to get to be that good. The other ones, they're prospects. They're supposed to be good. They might turn into something, but you let them go for a bunch of prospects. You're flipping a coin that these guys, or some of them, are going to pan out. I want them to stay. I don't think I want to see them break the bank to do it like Cabrera. I mean, like you said, the massive deal they signed him to the end of his career. The last 2 or 3 years are pretty lame, and that wasn't even a pitcher. A pitcher going into their late 30s. You're not going to get the return on him. I don't know, and I'm a firm believer. Don't believe a thing you read online.
Oh yeah,
ever. I mean, he's been gone so many times, and he's staying so many times, and people they just put that stuff up there, and people buy it. They buy into it, and no. They're not talking about it. Harris and what's his name, Greenberg? Greenberg,
I think.
Greenberg, yeah. They're not saying a word. His agent's not saying a word. They never do. They keep that stuff in house, and when there's something to talk about, they're going to be the ones to do it. But don't believe anything you hear right now. Don't do it.
Except on this show, except from us, but definitely not. Definitely not on the internet. No, you're right about that, because it's funny to me on all sides of this now with the internet, because I've even thought of the idea. We had a Pistons representative, Eric Vincent, on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about one of his colleagues that he writes for a legitimate outfit called Clutch Points, and they had talked about a trade that Kendrick Perkins had teased of Anthony Davis to the Pistons. And I saw that same rumor on NBA Centel, which for those that are uninitiated, it's an X account that is a parody account. It says it in the subject line. It's got probably 1 million followers. They have believable stories that are close to the truth, but are parody, because I forget what the actual, it's like NBA Central is the actual one, and there's this NBA Centel. But it's very hard to determine what it's, these lines are very thin. That's what I brought up to Eric, is like, hey, a legitimate source, quote unquote, brought this up with Kendrick Perkins, a guy that's supposed to be an insider and has insight into the NBA and is a pundit on a show. He brought it up, but a parody account also brought it up. So depending on which one you got it from, one of those reports is legitimate and the other one is not. Yep. And it's the same thing with the Tigers. With the Lions, you got people wanting to fire Brad Holmes at this point, which is just silly to me with a 7-5 team. I mean, Mike, you're slightly older than I am. You barely. I mean, well, if you predate the MLB, then we might have to put you at even older. But I mean, you've been around for a lot of these Lions and Tigers seasons and stuff, and it's been a lot worse than this. And it's just funny that we find a way to complain and have issues with this.
Everybody is an expert. Everyone out there, you see these comments. I don't have Twitter, but I have Facebook, and the garbage that comes through after a Lions game, like the last one, it just laughable. These guys never played or coached a day in their life, but they know everything.
Exactly. And that's why we try to at least be a little bit balanced on this show. It's like, yeah, sure, we'd love to see that the Tigers we wish they would have made a run through the playoffs, but we got that great run last year. The Lions, sure, you wanted a better season than 7-5 currently after the 15-2 season, but it's tough out there, and it's still not 0-16, and I was at that 16th loss in Lambeau, so I know how that feels there. So yeah, it's the future can still be good, and a lot of these teams are playing pretty well. We're actually going to start. We're going to go to break here, but we're going to start off the show with Chad Bush, who's the play-by-play guy for the Motor City Cruise, who are good in their own right, but obviously part of the Pistons organization that have been playing very well. So we're going to get Chad's takes on the Cruise and the Pistons so far, and primarily Dennis Jenkins, because he's seen him play basically more than anybody else. And when he got hot, there was a lot of people asking about him. So we'll talk to Chad about what the prep has going on after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy to bring this next guest on. He always gives us good information, and I like what he's doing out there with his company. This is Chad Bush of the Prep. It's entrepreneurial endeavor where he does a bunch of different play-by-play and commentating events around. He's done some here locally, and he also covers the Motor City Cruise as part of it. But I was remiss in the first segment. I usually start with the thing of the day, and I started with Thanksgiving, and I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, Chad. But now that we're hitting December, everything pretty much is, for December, I've noticed the thing of the day is always just cookie or baked good themed, it seems. And so it's Cookie Cutter Day. So I'm curious if Chad Bush has a cookie shape that he would like, and what type of cookie that he would like to make into that shape. I don't know if you're a big cookie guy, though, Chad.
Oh, give me a snickerdoodle shaped like a Christmas tree all day, baby.
That's the perfect way to start this out. See, we're starting off with December here. We got holiday music playing at the station here. I like it. I knew you'd have a good answer to that question, Chad. I had faith in you here. That's a solid answer, too. So now you're getting me hungry. But no, we're happy to have you on. And I like watching you with the Motor City Cruise. I follow your other content here. And one of the main reasons I always try to get you on anyways, but one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on now, timing wise, is because we've obviously had a hot run at the main club at the Pistons here with Dennis Jenkins, and I've had a bunch of my friends texting me, knowing that I follow the Pistons and cover them for the show, and say, where did this guy come from? Did I just not notice him? Did he come out out from the middle of nowhere? And I've said to most of them, you got to be watching Chad Bush and the Motor City Cruise here, because then you would know about him. We've been covering him on the show since last summer, because we covered him in Summer League. We've covered him with you through the Cruise end of it, and this is a good lesson on why you should be watching the G League. There's many reasons that we'll probably cover through the interview here, but this is one of the main ones, because you've gotten to see him more than anybody I know, and I'm sure you weren't that surprised with what he was doing at the main club here.
Dennis Jenkins is the poster child for what the G League dreams are made of. This guy was given an opportunity, ran with it, did well last year. It was no surprise to folks that watched him last year that he was going to be one of the top returners coming back in the G League. But, I mean, you've got 25 to 35 guys in the G League that could, at any point in time, be into an NBA lineup and roster. But it's usually a stuffed roster. They're on the back end. This guy has jumped to the top for the number one team in the Eastern Conference, where they were starving for a guard. It was the perfect storm. Ivy's out. We know the whole story. Sasser's out. Ugh, all right, Dennis Jenkins, the next guy up, I guess. Okay. And then the rest is history. This is what the G League's all about, training guys, getting guys ready. But really, the G League's to take a spot at the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th chair. This dude is earned himself not just an opportunity to play, because that's usually, a cool thing if a guy gets to even play. This guy's starting tonight in the NBA for the Detroit Pistons. So, a bit of a surprise even to those in the know on Dennis Jenkins, but really cool that he's done his thing, and he is Mr. G, and that is the dream of the G Leaguer that's out there. And this is a real-life story, and it's happening right in our state.
You summed it up well. I mean, that sums up the journey of the G League very well, because I was watching one of your broadcasts here the other day, and it was against the Herd, and you were talking about, I want to talk about the Herd side of it a little bit in a minute, but I believe at one point, I think it was another game I was watching, but at one point, I think the Cruise had 3 guys that were basically tryout guys that had made the team via tryout. So the idea that you can make this team via an open tryout, that I don't think a lot of people are even aware happens, and then that no, it wasn't Dennis Jenkins that made it that way, but some quality players have made the team that way, and then you also have players off the same team that could be thrust into the lineup like Dennis Jenkins. It's just a fun for modern day, where we have all this scouting, all this research, all this tape on everybody. You can still find diamonds in the rough that went to 4 different colleges like Dennis Jenkins, bounced around, didn't necessarily find his footing in college to the degree that he could have, so then he's got to go to the G League, and then they say, oh, well, we got something in this kid, pull him up to be one of those end of the bench spots, but then depth gives way, he has to take over, and now you've got a rotational guy. You're probably not you've been saying it on the broadcast, but you're probably not going to get him back in Motor City as long as the contract works out here. And then you've got legitimate guys that have also made the team via tryout. So I just like that juxtaposition, that is kind of the breeding ground for the G League, that then those guys can still make the big time in the NBA.
Yeah, you're right. There's two layers to it, and you described both of them very cleanly, and that's the storyline this year for the Crews. 5. I correct you on this, but who could believe this if I even said it? 5 open tryout players are on this Crews roster. These are walk-ons. These are the equivalent of walk-ons in college walking on in a local tryout and making this team.
Well, and the 3 I was mentioning, I think that was a day that you guys had 3 in the starting lineup. That's actually what I was referring to, because you had.
How about that?
That's amazing to me. We've seen Johnny U a lot, but the fact that you had 3 guys, because Tolu was up at that time, Dennis Jenkins was up. I think all 3 of the two-way guys were up. So you guys had 3 in the starting, but I didn't realize it was 5 total. I don't think I knew the number, and that's amazing. That's basically a third of the roster plus.
It is, and I was kidding on the call out, but I mean there were 3. It's grown to 5 now, and they've brought a practice guy out of Wayne State back and forth. He's kind of the 5th, so it's a quasi 5, but it's legit. And the storyline there is John Ukamata, who's from Southfield, Michigan, and the same journey that others have taken many colleges. But John was in this slam dunk competition that the NBA and the G League shared last year. And this guy can really jam it. But his beauty is that he can do everything. He can do everything. This is one of their top 3-point shooter from last year. He's a dunk-a-thon. He's a passer. He's a defender first. I mean, this guy's a dream. And then they went out and got a guy that's very similar to him from Detroit, went to Central Michigan, fire up chips. His name's Brian Taylor, and he's out of Detroit Edison High School in the city, and he's another great story. This guy is kind of like a miniature version of John Ukamata, and he's been in the starting lineup. So, yeah, there's guys that even on the big club, on the Crews club, that have grown from walk-on tryout players into making roles and having big roles. So it's been a good storyline, and the Pistons organization is getting the fruits of the labor of great decisions they've made. And kudos to the front office for the Crews, by the way, for being able to find 5 tryout players, let alone to try out, that are legit, but to make the team. And props, to all the folks at the top of the front office for the Crews that are doing that. And, of course, they share resources with the Pistons. But Max Unger, the GM, and Speedy is the president of basketball operations. So they're doing a good job. They've been challenged this year in wins, but as we know in the G, it's not always about wins and losses. Your job is to protect the big club, and when they need help, you're supposed to serve them. And if that's what your duty is, then the Crews have been doing their duty this year so far. They have.
They've been developing talent down there, and you're right about the scouting element, because it's a whole different level that they have to deal with at that level of things. When you're at the big club, you're drafting people, and you're looking at the top 50, 60 guys for those first 2 rounds, and then you're adding in another 50 or so prospects that might be a guy that ends up in a Motor City Crews or with the G League. But at that level, when you're at the G League, yeah, you're looking for local talent, not only local talent, but they've been scouting the local talent for a long time, and they find these guys that have slipped through the cracks, like a Johnny U, like some of the other guys you've been mentioning, and they've done a great job at it. So yeah, it was good to shout out all those guys. One of the things that I couldn't get over was the juxtaposition of that herd game that you guys had, because we're talking about the G League, how it's supposed to exist, and then I look at that herd team, and I'm like, wait a minute, you got 5, now you're telling me 5 walk-on guys on the Crews, and I'm seeing Victor Oladipo and Dennis Smith Jr. and some of and Johnny Davis on the Bucks team. That
nailed it.
Yeah,
they were the other end. They had 5 former first-round draft picks, and wait a minute, in the top 13 in the draft that they suited up. I think it was 4 guys. So no, you're right. You could get that's what the G League's all about. Guys that mix and match, and everybody's got a story, and nobody on that roster should ever be under thought of, because they're always a threat. It's a crazy fun league, and I know you're close to the rival, the Grand Rapids Gold, who are on top of the G Central Division right now. So exciting times in the G, no doubt, in the state of Michigan.
I know I have a harder time going out to see the Gold, even though I am a big basketball fan and big G League fan, big basketball at every level. Basically, I am a basketball junkie, but the idea that we don't have the Detroit team here anymore makes way more sense where you guys are. It really does for them to move over there. I'm glad we still kept a team, but they also don't have the same thing. I mean, man, this occurred during COVID. I remember when they were trying to shuttle guys and guys were getting excluded from games and testing positive and not able to be in the lineup, that Denver couldn't do anything because their team was here. When Detroit has Motor City Cruise right there, they can just send a car for somebody and have them over there in a jiff. But yeah, Denver's not getting anybody from Grand Rapids in any quick amount of time here.
No, they're not. And it's even better than that. They literally cross the court at the Pistons Performance Center. They share the same headquarters. Actually, the Cruise, of course, is not as big of a luxurious locker room in that facility, but they do share it. So yeah, it makes transactions very easy, and you never know. You never know when somebody's popping down or popping up. And the fact that the Denver Nuggets are the team that claims the team in Grand Rapids, somewhat of a disadvantage there. But it's nice that it's created somewhat of a rivalry, a little bit within state. So, a lot of fun times in the G League, Ryan. Yeah,
that's a rare G League instance there that you can have a rivalry in the same state, and I'm glad, especially as Grand Rapids, we have minor league teams here, and so to have a G League team here is nice to accompany the AHL team and the single A club in baseball. So and maybe an indoor football league team. We're not sure where we stand there, but soccer for sure coming. So yeah, it's nice to have that rivalry, and I like watching the Cruise, especially watching your broadcast. But we've got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back with Chad Bush and talk about kind of the other side of the prep here and talk about what else he has going with the business and the other broadcasts that they've been putting on. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Chad Bush of the Prep and the Motor City Cruise. Chad, I wanted to talk to you about the rest of the prep related activities because you guys are always busy. I'm trying to follow you on social media, and I'll give you a chance to plug that part of it. But I like what you do because you elevate the circumstances for these other games where it might be a game. I had my first chance to do a public address announcer I had to fill in for my nephew's high school game here locally, and so I finally got a taste of that here. But you do a much better job. I was trying to really cobble it together in 30 minutes before the game there, but I like what you guys do. You come in, you bring a very professional broadcast, and you elevate that game. And we've talked about that in previous interviews, but it gets an experience where the kids don't forget that. They don't forget when their game was on TV and on national broadcast, and had these professional broadcasters that are also doing the Motor City Cruise and other things. And so I wanted to get your feel for how that's been going and what the schedule's been like here and some of the things that are coming up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. No, we're fortunate to be in our fifth year now of providing the most fully produced high school broadcast in the state of Michigan, and we've averaged over 100 high school games over the last 3 years, and of course we do more than high school, as we talked in the previous segment, but high schools are bread and butter, and we are just crossing into the winter, and so we've got hockey already underway. We've got basketball. We're starting up this week. We will have basketball coverage at the Gotta Get It Classic in East Kentwood, and that is coming up in January. So there will be 5 or 6 games that day. That's January the 10th at East Kentwood High School. So we'll be broadcasting. It's always a great event. Our good friend Mike Thomas, who brought his magic from the east side of the state to the west side of the state, and he's been back and forth, but the guy's a winner. Yeah, we love to broadcast high school games. We have a passion for it. We believe these kids deserve a platform that they can be proud of, where they can get a professional experience. It doesn't have to be that 1% that gets to a state title game to get a professional broadcast. So yeah, it's all about the experience and giving these young men and women an opportunity to really feel good about their experience and remember it, and also create a community effect of everybody that's been a part of that team, parents and folks from that town and area and alumni and everybody. So it's for everyone. It's to promote the school, not just their academics or their athletics, but their academics, what they're known for. We try to publicize and give the schools, a nice opportunity to promote what they do well. And we try to add graphics and headshots and give everybody a starter graphic and really kind of go over the top from what these high school kids are used to getting with this kind of coverage. There is a cost to it, but we believe it's worth it, and we believe it also gives an avenue for other businesses to sponsor these games and support their community, their teams, and whatnot. So, yeah, no, we love doing it, and we had a great fall. We were actually in Hudsonville on the west side of the state to open the season again. I'm sorry, we were in. I apologize for that. We broadcasted Hudsonville at Rockford.
Rockford, yep, I remember that.
To start the year, and that was a heck of a game. And I'm sorry, Saline at Rockford. I'll get it right. Third time's a charm.
We'll get there.
But no, we were fortunate to see another game. I believe it was Hudsonville at Rockford. That's why I was getting confused later on in the year. So we did East Kentwood as well here in Southfield to start the season. Everybody got an idea that they were going to be legit this year, and they were. And so, yeah, we continue to invest on the west side of the state as well as the east, where we're from in Metro Detroit, because, look, we think the whole state deserves coverage. We're extending to mid-Michigan a little more this year as well. So, we love doing what we do, and we are very grateful that we get the support of coaches, athletic directors, booster programs, and local businesses to help support these live professional broadcasts that bring these kids' esteem just a little bit higher.
It's a great cycle that you create with this, because like you said, you integrate into the community, and then the kids get the benefit because they're on a broadcast, they get highlighted. Like you said, all the aspects of the school get highlighted. So that includes the teachers and the administration there, but it also gives, that's really what these sports start out as is a lot of them are sponsored by local businesses. And then once you get to the high school level, then it's a little bit different. There's still some sponsorship opportunities there depending on the school, but it used to be that it was the baseball team sponsored by the local pizza place or what have you, and that's how it kind of starts, and then that fades away some. But these businesses still want to help out the community and want to be tied to the sports, and sports are an integral part of the community. So I like that you kind of reinitiate that cycle back to how it once was, or how it begins, and then reconnect that, because like you alluded to, Chad, it goes beyond just that one instance. It's not just, we came here for one game and now it's over. No, that'll have a lasting effect in that area.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to build relationships, and we're trying to also, build multiple programs and try to give everybody a taste of what this is all about. And so, yeah, no, you're spot on there. It's a community effort, and we also try to spotlight the businesses and give them, some extra exposure that they wouldn't. And one of the other things I'm quite proud of our company is giving folks in the media industry, such as you and I, an opportunity to do what we do at a what I believe is a high level. But let's be honest, it's not Fox Sports, it's not ESPN, but it's at a high level, and so it gives camera operators jobs. When they're not working games, it gives graphics people and audio people and all the off-air people that I know you're quite aware of that work behind the scenes, they're getting work too and experience and getting paid. And so I believe we've also added and given the workforce a lot of opportunities for reps to make money and to, be a part of something that's a professional broadcast, but yet they don't have to make it to the bigs yet to get to, ESPN or whatnot. So I'm proud of the fact that we have 55 employees as of today that rotate in and out of games all season long. So I like the fact that we're helping the broadcast production community in Michigan, and especially here in Detroit. And we have several workers in Grand Rapids as well that we call upon when we're on the west side.
That's a great point, because it's kind of like the comparison we were making with Dennis Jenkins and having a place in the G League to be able to then launch into the NBA and have the opportunity. A lot of these people have the ability, but they don't necessarily have the opportunity. You can't just launch into, okay, I want to be a cameraman for the NFL. Okay, well, that's a great goal, but you're not going to be able to start there. You're going to have to work your way up. But what are those opportunities to work your way up? How do I get from I'm recording things in my backyard to I'm a professional cameraman for a professional sports league? And it's nice that there's more opportunities in the in-between to hone your skills, add to your resume, and then build up so that you do have the confidence and meet the requirements necessary to be a professional in whatever that individual career path is within the broadcasting field.
No doubt. And, to add to that, we also believe in giving high school students an opportunity to be on our crew and to come on and intern. We have a relationship with Redford Union. We speak to them once a week. We talk to them. We've offered them internship opportunities. We're working on a bowling broadcast together. And at every school we go to, hey, is there a student that has an interest where they like to shadow? We're not going to throw them on camera one for, Catholic Central St. Mary's, but they might be able to sit back and watch and learn and soon enough get a shot to get in the game and get some reps. So you're right. It is. We're all kind of, and I put myself in that category. We're all kind of in the G League, so to speak, trying to get more reps, trying to get better, and trying to, of course, be our best, just like you and I are doing. So we try to offer that to the high school kids that are also working to try to find out if it's something they might want to do. But we do give those opportunities to them, but we're not also going to put them in a spot where they're going to get embarrassed if something doesn't go right, because our expectations are a little different because folks are paying for this. So we also got to be cognizant of that too. But I really love the fact of giving opportunities to kids and to young professionals that otherwise really wouldn't have that work.
Is great. Yeah, I like that you're doing this. I like that there's more opportunities for everybody. And it's cool that you have the visibility. You get to combine the visibility of the Motor City Cruise level, and you're on ESPN. You're on a national broadcast with, hey, we also you use that visibility to highlight the other things that you're doing. So we appreciate you joining the show and appreciate the insight on the cruise and on the industry in general. And make sure to highlight all the social media, upcoming schedule, hit that East Kentwood event one more time, and I'll make sure to share that on our social media as it gets closer, because that's not too far away, and we've got some connections at East Kentwood here, so we want to make sure to promote that too.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. We'll keep you in touch. Yeah, that's January 10th. The games that we're at, got to get it, Hoops Classic. And of course, you can catch us all the time, anytime at your leisure on YouTube, The Prep Sports Media. So appreciate all that support, Ryan, and you keep doing a great job, man. You're one of those guys that you're in the bigs in my eyes, man. You do a great job, and I love your level of professionalism and knowledge and the mass wide variety of all the things that you're up on the know on. So really appreciate you thinking of me and having me on tonight.
Definitely. Anytime. We hope to have you back soon. Appreciate those kind words. And I feel the same way about you. I like listening to games with your voice. So I'm hoping to hear more of it. I like watching the Cruise. So I'm glad we get to do that and hear you there. And hopefully we'll be hearing you in more places as time goes by here.
All right, man. You're always welcome to come down. We got a ticket for you. So I know you're a Cruise fan, not a Gold fan. We want to promote that. So come on down.
It sounds good. I'll make the trip over there at some point in time. Yeah, I got to support the club and everything. So appreciate it, and we'll look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thanks, Ryan. You're good, man.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Take care. Thanks to Chad Bush. Appreciate him coming on. Fun conversation about the Cruise and that industry as a whole, because we talk about the Pistons every week, but the Cruise are a big part of what's going on there, and so it's fun to have him on. We'll have him back on at some point, but we'll turn our attention to hockey here. We'll have Michael Devellano of Pucks and Dreams. He's a hockey scout and want to get his takes here on the Red Wings and what's been going on in the season so far. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy to bring on this next guest. We've been trying to get him for a little while here. This is Michael Devellano. He's a hockey scout and has his own content area for hockey, Pucks and Dreams, and been wanting to get his opinions. I've seen him on different podcasts that we're associated with here, and so we always celebrate the thing of the day, Michael. And since it's December, it's basically all baked goods at this point for the thing of the day.
Oh my God!
I know. So I'm curious. We haven't talked yet, so I don't have a feel for you. But I don't know if you're a cookie guy. It's Cookie Cutter Day, so I'm curious if you have a favorite cookie, and in what shape would you like that cookie?
Oh God, that's a crazy question. I mean, anything I would get would probably have caramel in it. And I mean, because we're probably going to talk about Red Wings, we could put it in the winged wheel.
That's kind of where I was leading you. I was hoping maybe you would do something to try. Our first guest did a very solid. He did a Christmas tree with a snickerdoodle cookie. I mean, that's that's a very solid holiday December answer. But I like this one. It's on theme here. Yeah, I'm happy to bounce around hockey in general, but I figured we'd focus on the Wings for the most part because that's primarily who we cover here, being a Grand Rapids-based podcast and radio show. And I know you're well versed on the Wings, so yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your takes here because it's been an up and down season. We've been covering them every week. There's some obvious issues there, but I'm curious what through your kind of scouting mindset and how you watch the games. I'm curious what you're seeing, and I kind of want to start there and then build it out from there.
I mean, on the good side, they're integrating a lot of the young guys, right? Like, there's probably, 4 sub-21-year-old guys on the roster. And that's positive. Because I think it gives you, a view into the upside of the team, that there's definitely some talent and capability there between Finney and Danielson being on the team and ASP making the team. Like, those are all really positive things. Defensively, obviously, there's some real challenges. And I think there's some, everyone's expecting a godsend in net, which has been really kind of concerning. So I think John Gibson is what he is, and you see that what maybe you would have seen in Anaheim. Talbot's played well in stretches, but, there's definitely some challenges with them defensively. But honestly, I think goals, the save percentage across the league is quite down, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I think you sent a tweet out at some point about that, and that was what keyed me into it. But yeah, it is down in general. I mean, the goals are up, and that's one of the things that this team, it is kind of a perplexing team. There are elements that are certainly better than last year. You've got the young guys coming up. I feel like some of the free agents that they got, although they weren't big names, they still came in and filled a role for the Wings and have been value adds for the most part, but they still have a hard time with, I think, what was their kind of Achilles heel last year. I wrote this down for the interview because the one of the big things last year was not being able to stop the power play. They were one of the worst teams in the league. They've gotten a lot better at that, but it feels like it's still that defensive zone, specifically with the bodies in front of the net, always seem to favor the other team. It doesn't matter who they're playing, whether it's the wings in the offensive zone and putting somebody in front of the net, or the opposing team putting somebody in front of the net against them. There's a lot of tipped pucks, and I know that's hockey to a degree, but what are you gonna do with that if you're Gibson and Talbot? There was one the other day that Talbot had that I think hit 4 different things by the time it got to the goal. There was no chance for him to do anything with that, and although there's probably some goals that they should have stopped and all of that, you still have to have the defense in front of them, and it just feels like they haven't been able to get those defensive alignments the way they've wanted them, and be able to communicate about the different assignments as you're kind of making that transition from blue line to blue line there.
And it's painful when you do have some young guys back there, and there's a gap in talent though between them and the guys beneath them. So you can see like it's a double-edged sword. So you've got obviously Sider's 24 now. Edvinson's he's still under 23, I believe, like 22. ASP's 20, and you still got Aljo, which is maybe a little older, but it's his second season. Big drop-off in speed between them and the guys under them, right? Sherratt's been reasonable, but you ideally don't have him in your top pairing. So they're really kind of like between time and I think another body, that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to have to get another top 4 guy maybe in there to, push a guy like Sherratt down. That'll really help, because a lot of it is about people being in the right chair, as a friend of mine would say. Like, are they in the right role? And are they, do they have the right number of minutes? And then you see guys like Kamonic, like you like him as a character player, but he's got serious speed issues. You see what Bernard Docker is. There's definitely a drop off there. So it's an imperfect setup still. I think it'll be better in a year, and maybe you'll see another guy like Wallander step in and be able to take a top 5 or 4 role, or someone else. You just kind of need one more guy that's a top 4 to help out a little bit.
I think you hit on one of the big team building aspects that I talk about with all these sports. The way to really improve your team going forward is to improve it from the top down. If you can then put somebody in that is, we're talking hockey now, but whatever the sport is, gets the slot high, and then you move everybody else down, you've improved the ranks all the way down, and then also improved that key 1, 2, 3, 4 spot, whatever you're talking about, but lead spot, key spot that's playing a lot of minutes, skating a lot of minutes in the NHL. And I think you hit it on the head, because I do like the additions that they had, but you talk about a guy like Bernard Docker. Like, I think that was a nice addition. Hamonic was a nice addition for what it was. I think they're playing well for what we can expect from them. We can't expect anything more than they've probably given if we had reasonable expectations, but they needed, at some point they need to make a bigger swing, but we don't know when that's coming. I think that we've known about the defensive struggles for a while, but it's just when they're going to take that swing. They had the offseason to try. They had last trade deadline, and now we've got the upcoming trade deadline, and you start to hear rumors around this time, but it's tough to make these deals happen. It's one thing to want to make it happen, but it's a totally different thing to get multiple parties to agree to it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's definitely tough to make deals, although you've seen, you look at Anaheim and what they've done. They're very big down the middle. Now they're big on the wings. That's one thing. They're not really a big team up front. And if you look at down the center, there's a big drop-off still with Larkin to what's behind that. You can see where there's opportunity for Danielson, and he's going to be a big rig. Guy's got way more speed than people realize. He's a responsible guy with offensive upside, but it's his first year, right? He came in, had the injuries, took a little bit of time to get into the lineup. You like what you see. There's other levels to him. And then same thing, like Casper's on cue, experiencing sophomore slump. Like, when he kind of snaps out of that, the potential's there. But there's still, like, defensively, that center ice position is the third guy down there, right? So it's really important. And they don't really have big wings up top that are slowing things down.
That's a great point. It doesn't seem like they're, like you said, like they're slowing things down for the other team. Like the other teams are cutting through a little too easily here.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the sophomore slump. That's been one of the key storylines with Casper. But why is that? I still have. I mean, I get it's like I don't know if it's something where your first year you kind of don't know what you don't know, and you have nothing. You play like you have nothing to lose, and then there's more tape on you for the second year, more expectations, and those kind of weigh you down. Casper seems like the type of player that would be able to avoid this in his style of play, but like you said, it's not an uncommon thing for people to deal with.
I mean, he's playing very safe. I feel like last year he was attacking, he was challenging guys with the puck, he was maybe a little more confidence. And I think you kind of hit it a little bit on the head, right? Where I think it's definitely a mental thing with a sophomore slump. Like, unless a guy totally didn't prepare, which I don't believe is the case with him, you can just see there's just something off of the edge there, right? And I think it's that expectation. It's like you come in, they're not sure if you're going to make the team. They're not sure what you're going to do. And they kind of picked his spots last year, right? He started on the wing, they moved him to center. Like, he got opportunity and he took advantage of that. Now it's like, okay, you're the second line savior, and that's just not flying, right? Like, the pressure is probably on him, and he's trying not to make mistakes, it feels like.
It's interesting to hear that, as that does make a lot of sense, because that I felt like that was one of the things that was strength for him last year, that he did kind of play like he had nothing to lose. He wasn't reckless out there, but he was playing hard. He was going after everything, and so that turning that to a conservative play style, I could see how that would change from the type of player that he was to not that he's bad now or anything. I think he'll, like you said, he'll get out of it. He's a young guy, and he'll snap out of it. But that little switch to being a little bit more conservative is probably the issue. And you want to look at him and say, hey, there's a lot of other young guys on this team. Just go after it. Just that's what they're trying to do now. Finney's doing that this year.
Yeah, and that was a pleasant surprise, right? And that's what you want to see, like a late round pick. I mean, I watched him in the W, but I didn't anticipate. He had a bit of an injury issue last year, and I didn't anticipate he was going to be as good as fast as he is, right? He's got a really good tool set. He's got a really good hockey IQ. He's probably jams himself up in front of the net a little too much. Like, he's got to learn to use space, and he could probably have 3 or 4 more goals by now. But that's just like everything else you got to love. Like, you can play him on the top 4, and he keeps the puck moving. He keeps it on the right guy's stick. He's a smart player, and that's really positive. He'll be more impactful 1 or 2 years down the line, I think, offensively, when he kind of figures some of that other stuff out. But that's really exciting, and I think you're going to definitely see. I mean, Casper we were all maybe really hyped about him last year, right? He was ahead of schedule, we felt. We always knew he had ability, and he seemed to improve in leaps and bounds. Like, he looked like he was out of it. All of a sudden, he's like dramatically better. I think you're going to see the same thing. Like, he'll kind of get back to that attacking, creative style, and he's got all the tools. He's healthy, and he's got some good size and skill. So I don't know. That'll be good long term.
Oh, definitely. And I think I think they probably planned on him maybe coming out a little bit stronger with all these young guys. But like you said, he is still very young, and there's a lot of guys that need to have a little seasoning and a little time in there. We got to take a quick break, but I want to talk about some of those other young guys that you have your eyes on, because you're always scouting, you're always looking at these guys. So I want to talk about the other guys, whether they be in Grand Rapids here or at the main club, who you kind of have your eyes on for the future. So we'll come back with Michael Devellano after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
From the Scully Statewide Moving Studios in Granville.
Country with a Twist, Jethro FM, 1530 AM, WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids, 99.5 FM, Lowell, and Jethro South, 980 AM, WAKV Otsego, Plainwell, 98.9 FM, Otsego, and 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at Jethro.fm.
Coming back here with Michael Devellano of Pucks and Dreams, talking some Red Wings and some prospects here. I know we've talked about some of the young guys, but I'm curious, since you do have such a keen scouting eye, if you've been keeping an eye on anybody else, whether it's down at the Griffins or any of the other young guys that we maybe haven't seen as much from, but are kind of roaming around in the system here. Oh, you on here, Michael? We might have lost him. He might have had it with us.
Sorry, I'm here.
There
Sorry.
we go.
I'm like, I think my phone went on mute. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Did you hear my question?
Away there. I sort of totally.
I'm sure it was a great answer too.
Probably great. I hopefully remember it. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you're starting to see the crazy depth of young guys that are kind of bubbling up to the surface. Like Max Plant is having a terrific season. Carter Bear from Everett obviously is starting to get back to his normal self. Like, I think he has 12 points his last 5 games in Everett, and Everett is a bit of a juggernaut. Like, that's a really, one of the top 3 or 4 programs right now in the whole CHL. So Carter's a great story coming back from the Achilles injury. I always say his name wrong, so I apologize if I butchered his name, but Dmitry Bukelnikov, hopefully I said that correctly, but he got hurt, I guess, recently with an injury that might have him out a little bit, but he was doing really well. So all those guys are having, a great start to their season. And then in Grand Rapids, I mean, you guys have seen, he's more of a veteran, but I actually think I would like to see John Leonard get a shot to come up to the big club. He's like, what, a goal a game right now?
Yeah, he's been hot. I haven't gotten out to a game yet, but we're gonna cycle in some Griffins coverage with some of the local folks, Hockeytown West and some other ones, and so we'll get more takes from them. But I've been hearing a lot about them. That's the nice part. I mean, there's like you said, there's a ton of depth, and I like that they realigned it to a degree where they sent some veterans down here to Grand Rapids, sent some of the young guys up, some surprises with Finney. Danielson may have gone up there a little earlier than they thought, ASP, and then, they sent some veterans down, and I'm sure that will kind of align things and help the young guys down here, because obviously they're doing very well here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to see them try maybe a Leonard at the main club or what have you, because clearly they need some juice there. So I would like to see them tinker with things a little bit more to find what works, because I know they're doing that to a degree, but clearly they haven't exactly found the system that works the best. And with so many pieces existing, no, you don't want to force anybody up too early, but a guy like that, why not give him a try?
Yeah, he's got some NHL games under his belt. I thought he had a really good preseason. He had 2 goals in that one game. And he just, he's continued on. He's done everything you could ask. He's got a little bit of jam, and he can score, obviously, at least at the AHL level. And I think every time, he's one of those guys where every time he's come up to the NHL, he's at least scored once or twice. If you look at his record, you're like, oh, okay, like he contributes. Like he's trying to make an impact. So, that might be a little shot in the arm. Obviously, Amadeus Lombardi's like doing great down there, like super high hockey IQ, talented playmaker. A little smaller, but he's just doing really well down there, and I'd love to see him get a shot. Brantford Nygaard, I mean, I don't know if you've seen him yet, but he's got, he's got some size, he's got that shot, and I think in the last 7 games he's racked up a bunch of points. Like I think he's almost point a game in the AHL right now. So that's really positive for them. And then the guy that was hurt for a bit, I think he's back now, is Carter Mazer. And I mean, originally you would have maybe had him slotted ahead of Finney, but he's still a good prospect that if he can stay healthy, that that would be someone to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, I think he was tracking, like you said, ahead of Finney and some others, but then he got the the injury last year. I heard he kind of bulked up a little bit, and then got nicked up a little bit again this year. But yeah, I've been hearing a lot of good things about him. Yeah, I've been able to see basically most of the roster play because we caught the red and white game, which was nice because we saw Bear even and a bunch of the young guys. So it's always nice to see what's coming here because, like you said, there's a ton of depth, and I know that people are getting a little anxious here in Michigan about Detroit and about the status of the team, but they've clearly built up and restored the depth that they once had, and it just takes time for those guys to go through the system because for every guy, for every Emmett Finney, there's guys that take a lot longer than that, and you have to wait until they're ready, and it takes time, and it doesn't always work to trade the prospects for a veteran guy. Those opportunities aren't necessarily there, and usually you only have one or two swings at that. So it's nice that the reinforcements are coming. It's just a matter of fitting them in and making sure to get them in when they're ready to go here.
Yeah, totally. And it's crazy. Like, we've said all those names. We haven't talked about the three goalies that are doing great. Like Trey Augustine's crushing it in the NCAA. Hopefully he'll get signed at the end of the season and get into the AHL. Kosa is obviously doing amazing. And, his contemporary is Wallstead, who's absolutely doing great in the NHL. And just based on his numbers, you'd hope that he would get some games in, especially, if they think that they want to start getting him ready over the next year or two to replace maybe a UFA goalie. And then, we haven't even talked about Postava. Like, he was a bit of maybe a revelation. Like, this is another big goalie they got out of Czech Republic, or I guess it's Czechia now. And he looks like he's a top goalie prospect, which is kind of crazy. So the three goalies are like adding to the excitement, I think, and people are anxious to see them, as we probably are, to get at least some some NHL starts. And then we didn't even, there's two other guys. One is Jesse Kikkonen, who they got in the Andrew Gibson trade, and he's doing very well. And then there's the other guy I was just thinking of. We talked about Plant. Anton Johansson in the Swedish Elite League, the defenseman, is a big, tall, lean defenseman, and apparently he's playing very well. So you can see, like, there's just a lot of options there long term.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the goalies because you talked about the pairing at the main club level in Gibson and Talbot. And although, yeah, I do think Talbot, I mean, especially for his age, he's playing great given the defensive situation in front of him. And Gibson, I think you were hoping for a little bit more, but like you said, that you kind of have to have the expectations in the right place for that. I think you were hoping for more of a 1A, 1B with those two, whereas Talbot has been a little bit better on the whole for the season. But now we have the 1A, 1B down here in Grand Rapids, and we didn't think we were going to have that with Postava down here along with Kosa. And yeah, that gives a lot of depth because we thought the other goalie that would be in the mix is the one over at Michigan State there, Augustine. But yeah, to have more is great because, yeah, hopefully, I was thinking that the plan would have been, okay, you get Gibson, you get what you can out of Talbot for another year or two, then Gibson becomes the main goalie. You pull up whoever's ready. Presumably at that point it was Kosa at the beginning of the season. But now it's a little bit different. You don't know what you're going to get out of Gibson. Talbot is seeming a little ageless right now, but he's got to be towards the end of his career. And then you've got Kosa, Augustine, and Postava all making a case where you got the two guys in Grand Rapids and then Augustine that could eventually get signed and fill in for him. So at least the future's bright there too.
And so there's lots of depth and options there. You've got to think Kosa's the guy that's absolutely knocking on the door. He's done everything that they asked. His numbers are on another planet right now. Augustine, I feel, if you look at who I would say is his contemporary in the Montreal system, and Jacob Fowler, Jacob's jumped to the AHL and had a seamless transition. You got to hope that Augustine's very similar, and that basically you're in really strong shape long term there in between the pipes. Like, I don't know if we've ever had Detroit with this much depth in the middle, like in the in that
It doesn't seem like it. Yeah, I mean, especially because that's been, obviously, it was a prominent position back in the day, but it was usually an acquisition or something like that, and not necessarily the depth coming up, especially for the more recent time. But yeah, they built that up like the depth everywhere else, and so hopefully the future is bright here sooner rather than later. But appreciate your perspective and telling us about kind of taking a tour around and telling us about the whole system here. Appreciate you joining the show. Tell the people where they can follow you for more coverage like this.
Probably the best place is on X, Twitter, however you want to refer to it as. It's Pucks and Dreams _ because I somehow managed to lose Pucks and Dreams. I cannot get access to it again. No idea why. If somebody works at Twitter, let me know. But yeah, that's probably the easiest place to find me. And I appreciate the opportunity to share time with you. And I'll mention one other name because I totally overlooked it, was Eddie Gemborg. And he's doing really well in the Swedish Elite League.
We have talked about him a little bit on the show here. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him too. I mean that's the nice part. It's not that you neglected him. It's the idea that there's so many names to mention, and that's a good problem to have. So yeah, we appreciate you joining the show. Be sure to follow him, and we'll hope to talk to you again here.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. Talk to you again.
All right. Thanks, Michael. All right, thanks to Michael Devellano. Appreciate him joining the show. We're going to go from one mic to another here. This will be a little different segment for us. So those of you familiar with the Bears segments that we do for Counter Intel, we usually have Rob Huff of Huff on Sports. He's a longtime friend of mine that covers the Bears. This is actually going to be his brother, Mike Huff, who was a former Pistons and Shock employee back in the early 2000s, and then went into law and became a sports law expert that did a lot of the analysis when sports gambling was coming to Michigan. So the impetus behind this segment is with all the gambling issues in general, but a lot of them seem to center around Detroit. We had the issue with JMO last year with the gambling, and then Chauncey Billups, Malik Beasley, a lot of guys that are tied to Detroit. Thought this would be an interesting conversation to go at it from a different level here with a local lawyer and a sports law expert. So we'll bring him on after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. I'm happy to get this next guest on. He's a longtime friend of mine, and I say friend of the show. He will be a friend of the show, but he's been a friend of mine since age 7, basically. And he's a former Detroit Pistons and Detroit Shock employee turned to a lawyer, and he is a sports law expert that helped give some of the analysis when sports gambling came to Michigan. And so when the Chauncey Billups thing was happening earlier here in the year, I thought of Mike immediately because we don't really do gambling on the show. We don't talk much about betting lines except for reference purposes. We don't give betting advice, but I wanted to talk about gambling in kind of a higher form here from the impetus of it coming to the state and then the animal that it's become. So Mike, you're probably familiar with Rob coming on the show that we celebrate the thing of the day on the show. So I've known you for a long time, but I don't know the answer to this question. It's National Cookie Cutter Day because everything in December is all treat related. And so,
naturally.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious what your favorite cookie would be and what shape you would want it in if you could pick your own cookie cutter, because I have guesses at that, but I want to know what the answer is.
You know what's funny, Ryan, is I really like the right amount of spice, and I appreciate during the holiday season the spice that you can get from cinnamon candies. So in the holiday spirit, I'll go with a Rudolph the Reindeer cookie cutter, a sugar cookie, and the red nose being one of these cinnamon candies.
I like it.
Is that what you were going to guess?
That is not what I was going to guess. That's a good one, though. We had Chad Bush, the play-by-play guy for the Motor City Cruise, on the first segment, and I felt like he gave a very Christmassy answer because he picked Snickerdoodle in a Christmas tree shape. But that's that's possibly about as Christmassy as you can get with the Rudolph one. I wouldn't have guessed that, but I do like those cinnamon candies too. So I'm with you on that. But yeah, we appreciate you joining the show here. I'm glad to have you on. I've told you I've wanted to get you on for a while, and I think this is a good concept to talk about because it's just been interesting to me. I know both of us, as kind of big sports fans and people that have followed sports for a long time, resisted the urge to get into the gambling side of things for various reasons, and I've held with that, and I think you have too. And it's interesting to see the change during our lifetimes. I feel like I always see it with specifically Al Michaels, because when I watch Al Michaels now, it was like he was allergic to mentioning anything about gambling, and now he has to do everything sponsored by FanDuel and DraftKings and MGM and all of those kinds of things. And so now that we see it so prevalent in sports, I kind of wanted to take a trip back to what it looked like when it first came to the state and kind of how you took that, and then where we're at now and some of the problems like a Malik Beasley, like Chauncey Billups, like some of these things that are happening, Jameson Williams. There's a lot of local stories with it, how that can kind of be encouraged by what's happening because it's so prevalent everywhere. But I wanted to turn the clock back to when it first came to Michigan and kind of how you saw that coming in, and then we'll kind of fast forward till now.
Yeah, and it's been a very interesting history from a legal standpoint, Ryan. As you know, sports betting was a little bit of the Wild West before and seems to be a little bit of the Wild West again. But when you and I were younger sports fans and then into our adult sports fans days, obviously there was not a lot of legalized sports betting. Basically, you had to go to one of certain states to be able to legally bet, states like Las Vegas where there were legalized sports bets. And the reason that was there was a federal law called the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And one of the big sponsors behind that was Bill Bradley, the former NBA player. And what the act was really designed to do was prevent or really protect the integrity of sporting competition at the college and professional level. What was interesting about the act is generally if Congress wants to regulate in a space, they would do so under a clear power that they possess, such as the Commerce Clause, to regulate financial dealings that cross state lines. What they did with PAPSA, and that's the abbreviation for the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, is they grandfathered in 4 states that had existing sports betting regimes and then told the state of New Jersey if they enacted a regime within the next year that they could do so. And then they told the other states that they couldn't pass laws legalizing sports betting. Now, going back to our high school civics classes, we know that under the 10th Amendment, any right that is not specifically granted to the federal government within the Constitution is violative of the 10th Amendment and reserved to the states. So there were multiple cases that started around 2012 when New Jersey sought to legalize sports betting. What New Jersey eventually did is passed a law that removed their restrictions on sports betting from their state laws, and this led to a series of lawsuits that ultimately went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court determined that PAPSA violated the 10th Amendment anti-commandeering principle and really that the federal government couldn't tell the states what they could or could not do to regulate sports betting. In other words, the federal government could only regulate sports betting if they chose to do so under one of their clear powers, such as under the Commerce power. There was one other law that was on the books at the time, and what you probably remember is we started seeing a lot of advertising and some movement from FanDuel and DraftKings even before the case got to the Supreme Court that analyzed PAPSA. And that was because there was an act called the Unlawful Internet Gambling Act that was also a federal law that prohibited the exchange of funds for gambling type activities. But that law explicitly excluded fantasy sports contests. So what FanDuel and DraftKings argued at the time is that what they were doing was actually conducting fantasy sports contests, not sports gambling. It was a little bit legally ambiguous, and I think they were pretty happy when PASPA got overturned. But that kind of paved the way for this to start. And then when PASPA was found to be unconstitutional, we kind of saw the Wild West open up, where we had a multitude of states, including Michigan, pass legalized sports gambling laws, some of them allowing online betting, some of them allowing betting in casinos. It really varies by state at this point. And what's a little bit unique is we've still got somewhere between 10 and 12 states that haven't really legislated in this space. So it's unclear what's legal or not legal in those states at this point.
There's a lot of fascinating things in there, and that's kind of one of the main things that I wanted to get to is how it is kind of the Wild West to a degree. My first point is you clearly paid better attention in the civics classes than I did. That's why you're a lawyer and I'm on the radio. Sorry, Coach Sturzma, who's at Hope now, but you clearly paid better attention there.
I think we both had him for U.S. government.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't remember who taught civics. So that's probably part of the problem. He's the only one that I remember for government anyway. And he was a good teacher, but yeah, you clearly got more out of those classes here, but no, there's another thing that I thought was funny in there that New Jersey factors into this as much as they do, because that's the most New Jersey thing that I can think of is to be
completely
grandfathered into a gambling program. If there's any state, I guess, other than maybe Nevada, then you're thinking New Jersey there. But no, that's a good summary of kind of what happened, because I had forgotten about the fantasy sports element of it, but it was almost like they kind of had almost a Trojan horse in there to a degree, because they had the gambling on fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports through FanDuel and DraftKings, and then once they had those things established and then that act was considered unconstitutional and revoked, then it's like, hey, we're here and now we already have our tentacles here that can spread out and then expand to the sports betting. So I think FanDuel and DraftKings both, I'm not sure which was really first to market. I think there was some back and forth there between those two, but then you've got all these other places expanding into that space with just the sports gambling aspect, because they figured out a way to get in and then get the proper momentum to get it revoked, so that the sports the fantasy sports part is really an important piece here.
Yeah, and obviously you and I had played plenty of fantasy sports growing up. Once those companies figured out how to monetize the fantasy sports component, it was pretty easy for them to be able to jump into the gambling space, and I think that's a lot of what we saw happen. In multiple states, sports betting has to be run through legalized casinos, but FanDuel and DraftKings already had a model for how to do this, so they were really able to jump in at that point, show the casinos that they could monetize their sports book for them. And I think that's part of the reason we've seen such rampant growth.
Why are some states resistant to getting into this? Because obviously the motivation would be financial, and there's probably other motivations. But why are there still 20% or so holding out from getting in there? Do you have a theory on that?
I don't have a global theory, and I think the challenge is because a lot of this is local politics. So probably the most notable state at this point is California, and part of what we've seen there is the Indian tribes that sponsor casinos within the state are very reluctant to have outside fantasy or sports gambling books come in and eat up some of the market space. So they were very publicly opposed to the ballot issue that California had a couple years ago to legalize sports betting. There's actually a pretty big dispute going on in California right now. You may have seen that there are some companies that are popping up that suggest they're not regulated by state law, but instead by federal law, because they're essentially selling futures. And so they have parties enter into what would essentially be a contract for a future for a certain outcome. Where we've seen this most commonly previously is in prediction markets for political elections, for example, where you can't legally gamble, but you can buy a future. This is what these companies are starting to do on sporting events. The tribes argue that this is basically sports betting and that they're trying to backdoor their way into the state of California's sports betting market, and they're very significantly opposed to this. I don't know where that one ends. I mean, presumably at some point, if parties keep finding creative ways to get into the state, you'll see some sort of settlement that benefits everybody. But it's probably going to be messy for a little while first. In other states, I think you see maybe some more of the traditional moral opposition to gambling and people losing money. Certainly, there's a little bit of a national push against sports gambling right now. And I think part of that's coming out of what we've seen with some of the recent court cases that have been filed.
Interesting. Yeah, that was one thing that was, I guess, not alarming, but interesting to me when I was in Cambodia, because they had casinos over there, but they actually had a rule that locals could not go into the casinos. They could only generate money from tourists. So I could wander in there because I was very clearly not a local, but I could go in there as a U.S. citizen, but anybody with Cambodian citizenship would not be able to go in there. So that's interesting, kind of thinking of it in that perspective here. But yeah, and this
is kind of the history of Las Vegas, right, Ryan?
Oh yeah.
It's become a sports destination at this point because every league has embraced what happens there. But for a long time, that's where you went if you wanted to engage in sports betting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now we have sports teams there, and that's where the development of this is interesting to me, because you're talking about kind of like the fantasy sports starting, and then that getting into certain states and starting it off, and now they're trying kind of another angle with these states that are more late adopters. But I don't, without some general oversight, because you're talking about kind of pressures from a national standpoint, but without general oversight, that you've got a lot of Wild West stuff happening that seems to continue to happen. And then the part that interests me, that maybe we'll take a quick break here and come back and discuss, is kind of where we are in modern day, which you have now such availability, because we used to have the Vegas. You had to go to Vegas. You had to go to adult Disneyland in Vegas and gamble and work with the sports gambling there. Now there's teams there. Now it's available in the majority of other states, but it's also too accessible to the actual players that play in the games. So if there was pressure before, there's even more pressure on the games with the availability and the amount of things that you can bet on. So that's where I wanted to kind of go with the conversation. But we'll take a quick break and we'll come back with Mike Huff and talk some more sports law here. Interesting conversation so far. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with sports law expert Mike Huff. This is an interesting conversation, Mike. I'm glad we are having this, because that's great insight into how things got set up here, and then that's why I kind of had the impetus to talk about this, because now we fast forward to modern day and we have this proliferation of sports gambling in a lot of the states and across the country. And then we have these incidents like with Chauncey Billups, which that will take a ton of time to, I think the next court hearing or court appearance is in March of 2026. And they're trying to actually greenlight that in like September of 2026 for the actual court hearing. But we have that incident. We have the Malik Beasley incident. We have the Jameson Williams incident. But all of those things just make me think we could discuss each individual one, but it's more, okay, you've pushed so hard to get gambling into all these places, but now we've got to restrict it from certain people and not have them tied to it. And when you have simple things like the Terry Rozier stuff, where he's potentially dribbling the ball off of his foot so that he can get an under on a prop bet for one of his buddies, it's got to be it's hard regulate it in the first place, and we're losing control of the regulation within the states, and there's no kind of national oversight. And now we're trying to regulate it within the buildings, and you can gamble here on this, but you can't gamble in this place. So it's I'm wondering where you kind of see this going, and what kind of puts a stop to that, or what the regulations eventually could be for something like this.
Yeah, so you've anticipated where a lot of folks have gone with this issue, right? Which is federal legislation would help to create a standard across the country and answer a lot of the questions, resolve a lot of the ambiguities, and help really determine what this marketplace looks like moving forward. There hasn't been the political will to get something done yet. There have been federal bills proposed. I think that the market is evolving right now, probably quicker than Congress can address it. So we would have to figure out what would be the most appropriate way for them to step in. But frankly, that's probably the body with the best positioning to actually be able to do something that would create a standard that would help both the operators and the leagues and the participants really have a good shared understanding. What we've seen right now, obviously, is leagues, for example, working individually with sports betting operators to try to figure out how to make the process work for everyone. So, for example, the NCAA worked with some of these sports betting operators to get some of the prop bets turned off for the exact, sorts of concerns we're talking about right now. Additionally, we've heard about both professional and college athletes being harassed by sports bettors when they don't deliver in a way that those folks were hoping. And I think that there's an interest from the leagues, the players' associations, and the NCAA as an institution to try to mitigate that.
Well, and not to make it, that's really interesting. It makes me think of, this is going to maybe come off as a little conspiracy theory-ish here, but it makes me think of when with the famous incident where Lawrence Taylor was staying in a hotel and he purportedly got food poisoning from bad food from the hotel because the people at the hotel were fans of the other team. And it makes me think of the idea that, like, some of these people could, if you are getting harassed by sports bettors, you could presumably put your finger on the scale. You put your thumb on the scale to a degree and say, hey, we had this guy at my restaurant or at this place, and they might be slightly less because these little, just a stomach ache or something being a little bit slower could mean the difference between, a big day, say you're a receiver getting that big catch, whatever it is, a big day and a day that is subpar. So then you bet the unders. I know I'm getting a little conspiracy theory ask right now, and I'm not trying to go into all the different butterfly effect scenarios of that, but that has to cross people's minds to a degree, because there's a lot of people that just look at the angles of some of these things, and you've got to reduce the number of angles.
Yeah, I think what's helpful, Ryan, is the sort of scenario you just identified is where parties are generally united in terms of wanting to see some sort of regulatory standard. Obviously, the operators care a lot about the integrity of the game because they don't want to lose money at their sports book, and they want participants who trust that what they're betting on is fair. The vast majority of participants are playing above board. They want to know what they're playing is fair. And certainly the leagues and the players' associations care about the integrity of their game. That's essential to the long-term health of their product. So I think the vast majority of people want to see some sort of standard here that protects the integrity of the game moving forward.
I just feel like we maybe haven't gotten that incident yet that presses on the money, because like you said, a lot of it is money motivation, whether it's the league, whether it's the sports books, whether it's the individual players, whatever it is, to protect that integrity, because thankfully there are a lot of people that do have a vested interest, a monetary interest in that integrity. It's not just, hey, let's all get our money. There's certain sides of that, but it's the idea that a lot of people do have a vested interest in the integrity. But there hasn't been, because I don't think this incident with Chauncey Billups and Rozier and Damon Jones, I don't think that was enough to really tip the scales where any of those. There might have been a few questions in that particular news cycle, and then it kind of died out for a while. But I don't think that necessarily got close to affecting the getting into the integrity issue. It's once you'd involve maybe some officiating piece of it, because that's always the accusation too, and other elements. It's once you get into those kinds of things that there might be a little bit more push for it, because those vested interests are getting challenged.
Yeah, and of course politics is messy too, right? So even if you have unity with some of the operators and the leads, et cetera, it took them a long time to come together. And then you still have the states that are holdout states where there's political pressure. So it's not like there's one easy solution moving forward that makes everybody happy. And I think you're probably right that there needs to be some event that really helps drive things forward politically.
Yeah, it's got to raise to the top, because like you said, yeah, I think that's probably the most true statement of the entire interview, that politics is very messy, especially nowadays, and it's got to get over the hump of the other pressing issues, because there's even other issues in sports, because you've got the NCAA, you've got the NIL stuff that's brewing, you've got all of that stuff that is having some involvement from the government. So to get involved there, yeah, it's complicated, because that's one of the main things that I wanted to highlight in this interview, is just how complex it is. And you've done a great job in highlighting the multiple complexities, because some of these things, I always make the comparison that you try to reach in and pull the string, that you go, oh, okay, this is what I have to do, and I pull this string, and then you just end up with a knot, because each string you pull here ends up a little bit knotted, because there's so many crossing issues here, and different entities and different ideas and motivations involved, where there's not an easy solution, which is true for most things.
Yeah, and we should be fair. Certain states have tried to address some of these issues. A lot of them drafted their law based on a model act. Generally, states want to prevent athletes from betting. They want to prevent athletes' family members or others who might have inside information from being able to bet or throw the market. The challenge is you still have, with D.C. and Puerto Rico included, 52 different regimes, including some that are just blank, right? So it's very difficult for all involved parties to get fully aligned when there's not full alignment at the base level.
Exactly. It would be hard to get people on the same sheet of music unless you had a reason to, an impetus to, like we're talking about. But interesting conversation. I feel like this sheds a lot of light on things, and I like that because I'm seeing so many podcasts and different things sponsored by DraftKings, sponsored by FanDuel. I like that we're leaning a little bit different direction, because it's not that I'm anti those places, but that they can, there's another side to gambling, and I talk to counselors and different people that talk about the pervasive nature of it, and how it can it can have obviously a very negative effect. And so it's good to understand the totality of the issue and the different players involved, because then I don't like how it always gets boiled down. It's like the Pistons issue with Malik Beasley, because we went after him. He didn't end up getting signed with the Pistons. And then by the end of it, they were like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe there wasn't really as much here as we thought. But then that was kind of on the proverbial page 7 instead of on the front page like the initial news. And he, still is involved in some of the hearings and things and some of the investigation, and hasn't gotten signed with the team yet. So we get the headlines, but we don't get the full nuanced conversation like we're having.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, as you already identified, it's probably going to take a major case, and I don't know if one of the current cases will reach that level or not. It's difficult to know what really leads to motivation to finally resolving some of the challenges around this, but you've already raised things like NIL as well, and that has the same issue where you have a lot of state regimes. You have the NCAA trying to step in. You have universities sometimes lying, sometimes pushing back. And we should note, you've mentioned money a lot. The leagues and the teams love the revenue that's coming in. They love the extra eyeballs that are paying attention. So I think they're trying to tread carefully and maintain healthy partnerships with the operators, while at the same time understanding that if they let things go too far, then they're going to have an issue.
Oh yeah, I mean they've been building lineups around this, as you know, Mike, for a long time. It's like what I know some of my friends that were into this. They would talk about the Wednesday night Maction, where you could bet on the Mac on Wednesdays, and maybe it's not teams that you care about unless you went to those universities, but they're watching those games because there's a betting angle, or you're trying to chase at the end of the day and you're watching the Hawaii game at 12 o'clock at night. There's a lot of things that have been built around this for a long time, even before it became more pervasive. So it's why it's worth having a conversation. And since I have a close contact that's a sports law expert, I thought, hey, why not call Mike here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad I could share a little bit of insight on this. It's still a messy space, but that makes it interesting from a legal standpoint. Definitely.
Well, and you're good at sifting through those things. And I was even looking at some of your, because when I was researching this a little bit and looking for some of the old articles when you were giving kind of the TV hits and the different media stuff, I had missed that you wrote for Cranes for a little while too. So you're a journalist in your own right.
Well, this was a pretty popular topic for a period of time there. There was a ton of uncertainty, and what we've seen is a long horizon, and the uncertainty has just evolved.
Definitely. And I appreciate you coming on the show, just because it was fun to have you on the show, but you gave a lot of insights to people, and I'm hoping that maybe we can have you back on as this stuff develops, because it is going to develop. I mean, there's not that I'm hoping for a scandal by any means, but there does need to be some changes eventually, and there are going to be some modifications. So appreciate you joining the show, and we'll look forward to hopefully having you back on here at some point.
Sounds good, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this, Ryan.
Definitely. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. All right. Thanks to Mike Huff. Appreciate him coming on. I thought that was an interesting conversation here because, there's a lot of conversations about the other parts of gambling, and everybody wants to give, okay, well, should you bet the over in this game, or which team are you taking on the money line? We intentionally don't do that on this show because I don't find it as interesting. I think it can create some problems, the gambling aspect and encouraging that. And so I'm glad we had a higher level conversation. But yeah, we'll take a quick break, and then we got a lot of mics on this show. We're going back to MLB, Mike, and we'll close out the show. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Happy you could join us here on Cookie Cutter Day. We're going to get Mike's favorite cookie here in a second. I'm curious. He never has. He never brings treats into the studio. Some of the other producers have treats with them, but do you have a favorite cookie that you like here, Mike?
I was happy you weren't asking me.
Well, that's an answer too.
Yeah. Typically, if I'm going to have a cookie, it's going to be like an oatmeal raisin, something like that.
That's a good one.
But shape of it, I don't know.
There's no need. We can make it in
we can go with a Christmas tree right now. That's
there
fine.
You go,
That's
or a tiger. You're a big Tigers fan there.
There you go.
But yeah, I see some other snacks. I'm not going to name names, but some of the producers have a tendency to bring snacks in. But you've never brought any snacks.
Sorry.
So that's okay. That works. You gave us great baseball coverage earlier, so we appreciate that, and we appreciate the rest of the guests. Chad Bush of the Prep and Motor City Cruise, Michael Devellano of Pucks and Dreams, Mike Huff, a sports law expert. He's also a local lawyer here, and former Detroit Pistons and Shock employee. We appreciate them all joining us. I thought that was interesting conversations with all of them. Appreciate all the support from the sponsors, Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Right Hand Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, and Williams Chiropractic.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.